two hooded figures sprint through the affluent streets of Woodland Hills, California. It's 4:53 in the afternoon on January 23rd, 2017. Blood is still fresh on their hands. Behind them, in the backyard of a million-dollar mansion, a celebrated hairstylist lies dying on his own patio, multiple stab wounds to his neck, face, and chest. At that exact moment, his teenage daughter is driving home from school, completely unaware that she's about to discover a nightmare that will haunt her forever. This is the story of Fabio Sementilli, a successful, charismatic Italian immigrant who built an empire in the beauty industry. But more importantly, this is the story of ultimate betrayal, a story of greed, obsession, and calculated murder orchestrated by the person who was supposed to love him most. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers: 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. January 23rd, 2017. The 911 call came in at 4:54 p.m. A teenage girl's voice trembling with absolute terror, desperate to save her father's life. 16-year-old Isabella Sementilli had just returned home from school to find her father, Fabio, lying in a pool of blood on their backyard patio. The scene was horrific. Multiple stab wounds painted a brutal picture of violence. As paramedics rushed to the scene, Isabella's screams echoed through the neighborhood. But it was too late. Fabio Sementilli, age 49, was pronounced dead. At first glance, this appeared to be a burglary gone horribly wrong. Two hooded figures had been captured on a neighbor's security camera just minutes before the attack, jogging toward the Sementilli home at 4:18 p.m. Fabio's black Porsche was missing from the driveway, later found abandoned 5 miles away with blood droplets inside. But as investigators processed the crime scene, something didn't add up. Detective Ryan Werner of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department studied the evidence carefully. Fabio's expensive Rolex remained untouched on his wrist. His wallet sat undisturbed in his pocket. Nothing else was missing from the luxury home. No ransacked drawers, no emptied safes, no signs of forced entry. The timeline was surgically precise. At 4:18 p.m., security cameras captured two figures jogging toward the house. At 4:53 p.m., the black Porsche speeds away. At 4:54 p.m., just 60 seconds later, Isabella's car pulls into the driveway. It was almost as if someone knew exactly when Fabio would be alone and vulnerable. 3 days after the murder, Monica Sementilli held a memorial service for her husband. Friends and family gathered in the same backyard where Fabio had been brutally killed, mourning a man who had touched so many lives through his work in the beauty industry. Monica appeared devastated. She could barely speak coherent sentences, repeatedly saying, "I'm not a wife anymore. I'm not a wife anymore." Her grief seemed overwhelming, all-consuming. But one person at the memorial didn't belong. Monica's friend, Deborah Obard, noticed him immediately. A man she'd never seen before, mingling with the grieving family. Something about him felt profoundly wrong. He didn't fit with Fabio's circle of friends and colleagues. Yet there he was, offering condolences, completely out of place. And he had a bandage on his left index finger. Obard was so disturbed by his presence that she secretly photographed him and handed the image to police. That single photograph would crack the case wide open. The mystery man's name was Robert Louis Baker. Within weeks, investigators discovered something crucial. Baker's DNA was already in law enforcement databases. He was a registered sex offender. When they compared his DNA to the blood droplets found inside Fabio's stolen Porsche, they got a perfect match. But the question remained: who was Robert Baker, and why would he want Fabio Sementili dead? The answer would expose a web of lies, obsession, and betrayal that had been spinning for over a year. Robert Louis Baker, age 53, was not who he appeared to be. He worked as a racquetball coach at LA Fitness in West Hills, charismatic, confident, magnetic, with what one acquaintance described as a very alpha male presence and kind of a sexual thing about him. He seemed successful, well-liked, always ready with advice or encouragement. But beneath that polished surface lurked a much darker truth. In 1993, Baker had been convicted of lewd and lascivious acts with a minor, his own teenage stepdaughter. After serving his prison sentence, he married the victim, and both entered the adult film industry together. By 2016, he was working as a fitness instructor, projecting an image of respectability while his predatory past remained hidden. That's when he first laid eyes on Monica Sementili. Monica, age 45, represented everything Baker craved. She was elegant, sophisticated, married to a successful man, living the affluent lifestyle he desperately wanted for himself. She had 2 teenage daughters and seemed devoted to her husband of over 20 years. According to Baker's later testimony, their affair began just weeks after they met at the gym in early 2016. What Monica didn't realize was that she had just become the obsession of a sexual predator who had already destroyed one family and was prepared to destroy another. Baker immediately moved to isolate Monica from her normal life. He convinced her to communicate exclusively through encrypted apps like Viber and burner phones, technology that would hide their relationship from Fabio. Investigators would later discover that half of all Monica's communications were with Robert Baker, more than with her husband and 2 daughters combined. Let that sink in for a moment. Half of her digital life was devoted to this man. Monica's friend Deborah Obard grew suspicious in the fall of 2016. She noticed Monica spending increasing amounts of time at the gym, always around the same man. When she confronted Monica about the affair, Monica vehemently denied everything. Obard then warned Fabio to watch Monica's gym friends. His response was heartbreaking in hindsight. He dismissed the concern entirely. He trusted his wife completely. After 20 years of marriage, he believed she would never betray him. If only he had known that at that very moment, Robert Baker was already planning his murder. In late 2016, Christopher Austin flew from Oregon to Los Angeles. His airline ticket was paid for by Robert Baker. Austin was 36 years old and worked as a parole and probation officer with at-risk youth. He considered Baker a longtime friend and thought he was visiting for a casual trip. Maybe some racquetball, some California sunshine. He had absolutely no idea he was being recruited for murder. Austin would later testify that Monica invited both men to her home for dinner. She served pizza and gave them a detailed tour of the house, paying special attention to the backyard patio where Fabio liked to relax by the pool after work. She showed them the layout, the exits, the blind spots. It was reconnaissance disguised as hospitality. Around the same time, Monica contacted a security camera company to upgrade their home surveillance system. The new system allowed her to remotely access the cameras from her cell phone anywhere, anytime. She would know exactly when Fabio was home alone and vulnerable. Baker's preparations were even more sinister. He purchased GPS tracking devices and secretly placed them on both of Fabio's vehicles, his daily driver and his prized black Porsche. Baker could monitor Fabio's every movement in real time, tracking him like prey. Austin testified that Baker told him Monica was trapped in an abusive relationship and desperately wanted Fabio gone. Baker painted Fabio as a controlling, violent husband who was making Monica's life miserable. He positioned himself as Monica's savior, protecting her from a dangerous situation. But Monica's daughter Jessica would later provide testimony that shattered this narrative. She described walking into her mother's bedroom one morning in 2016 and finding Robert Baker in her mother's bed. This wasn't about rescuing Monica from abuse. This wasn't about protection or safety. This was about possession. Baker wanted Monica all to himself, her life, her money, her complete attention, and he was willing to kill to get it. The financial motive was staggering. Fabio had a life insurance policy worth $1.6 million. If he died, Monica would collect everything. She could start fresh with Baker. No messy divorce, no custody battles, no splitting assets. Just a widow and her new boyfriend, funded by blood money. The planning phase was complete. All they needed now was the perfect opportunity. January 22, 2017, the day before the murder. Monica sent Baker a text message. Fabio was heading to the store. According to Christopher Austin's testimony, this was their first attempt to kill Fabio. Baker and Austin positioned themselves to intercept him, weapons ready, adrenaline pumping. But something went wrong. Austin later said he couldn't go through with the attack that day. Perhaps his conscience finally kicked in, or perhaps the logistics weren't right. Whatever the reason, Fabio returned home safely that evening, completely unaware that his wife had just tried to have him murdered. But Baker wasn't giving up. He had come too far, invested too much. Monica had promised him a new life together, access to the insurance money, freedom from his own financial struggles. He told Austin about Monica's wealth, saying once Fabio was gone, they could disappear together and live the life they deserved. The plan was straightforward. Make it look like a burglary, collect the insurance money, and start over somewhere else. That night, Monica's behavior revealed her true priorities. While comforting her daughters and playing the role of devoted wife, she was already planning Fabio's funeral in her mind. The performance had begun. The trap was set. Fabio Cementilli had less than 24 hours to live. January 23, 2017, the day that would destroy multiple families forever. Monica's plan required perfect timing and an airtight alibi. That afternoon, she left home in her black Ford pickup truck, telling Fabio she was going shopping at Target. A routine errand, nothing suspicious. Surveillance cameras captured her truck entering the Target parking lot around 4 p.m. But before Monica entered the store, someone got into her vehicle. Prosecutors believe that person was Robert Baker, receiving final instructions for the murder. Monica then went inside Target, establishing her alibi while texting Baker that the coast was clear. Fabio was home alone. Baker received the signal and told Austin, "She's going to the store. We have a small window." Austin testified that Baker put him in the trunk of a rented Nissan and drove to a staging area near the Cementilli home. When they arrived, Baker handed Austin a knife and asked, "Are you with me?" Austin would later tell the jury, "Like a dummy, I said yeah, and followed him." At 4:18 p.m., they jogged toward the house like two fitness enthusiasts out for afternoon exercise, the perfect disguise captured on multiple security cameras throughout the neighborhood. Austin testified that Baker told him the front door should be unlocked. "She's going to leave the door open," he said. When prosecutors asked who "she" was, Austin replied without hesitation, "The defendant." The door was indeed unlocked, just as planned. Fabio Cementilli was sitting peacefully on his backyard patio, relaxing by the pool after another successful day as vice president at Weller, one of the world's leading beauty companies. He had built an empire through talent and determination, working with Hollywood stars and mentoring young stylists who idolized him. He never saw them coming. Robert Baker fatally stabbed Fabio multiple times in his neck, face, and chest. The attack was so vicious that Baker cut his own finger in the process, the same finger that would be bandaged when he brazenly appeared at Fabio's memorial service just 3 days later. Fabio had no defensive wounds, suggesting he was taken completely by surprise by men he had never seen before, sent by the woman who had promised to love him forever. Baker and Austin fled in Fabio's Porsche, abandoning it 5 miles away. The timeline was perfect, choreographed like a deadly ballet. At 4:53 p.m., the killers drove away. At 4:54 p.m., exactly 60 seconds later, Isabella's car pulled into the driveway. Isabella's screams echoed through the neighborhood as she discovered her father's body and called 911. The operator guided her through desperate attempts to save Fabio's life, but the wounds were too severe. He was already gone. Monica arrived home minutes later to find police cars and ambulances surrounding her house. Her performance began immediately. When Monica's friend Elise Bluel arrived at the house that evening, a stranger escorted her inside with a chilling warning, "Don't step in the blood." Monica appeared utterly devastated. Bluel remembered her sitting there, unable to form coherent sentences. "I'm not a wife anymore," she kept repeating. "I'm not a wife anymore." It became her mantra, as if she were processing an unimaginable shock. But while Monica publicly grieved, she was privately celebrating. That very night, with her husband's body not even cold, she began asking about Fabio's life insurance policy. She wanted to know when the $1.6 million would be released. Her priorities were crystal clear. The money came first. The grief was just an elaborate performance. For months, Monica maintained her widowed victim facade while secretly continuing her passionate affair with Baker. Police surveillance captured them taking romantic trips to Las Vegas and Myrtle Beach. Monica introduced herself to Baker's friends as Monica Baker. She was already living the fantasy of their new life together, built on her husband's blood money. Monica called Detective Jean Parcell repeatedly, but not to seek justice for her murdered husband. She asked for updates on DNA evidence and estimates of when the insurance policy money could be released. She wasn't concerned about catching Fabio's killers. She was concerned about collecting her payout. But investigators were watching everything, documenting every move, every phone call, every romantic rendezvous. And the web of lies was about to collapse. By February 2017, Robert Baker was the prime suspect. His DNA in Fabio's stolen Porsche was undeniable, damning evidence. When investigators questioned Monica about him, she claimed she barely knew the man. She told detectives she wasn't even sure of his last name. She only knew him as Rob, a casual acquaintance from the gym. When confronted with Baker's blood evidence in the Porsche, Monica fabricated an elaborate story. She claimed she had accidentally hit him with a racquetball racket during a game and brought a bloody towel home from the gym. It was absurd, desperate, and investigators weren't buying it for a second. For months, they conducted surveillance on the secret lovers, documenting their continued relationship while Monica played grieving widow in public. The evidence was mounting. Encrypted communications on burner phones, GPS tracking device purchases, and most damning of all, their ongoing romance while Fabio's body was barely cold. On June 14, 2017, police staged an elaborate sting operation. Monica and Baker were pulled over under the pretense of a routine traffic stop. Officers claimed their car might be stolen and needed to be checked. Both suspects were handcuffed and placed in the back of a police car equipped with recording devices. What they said to each other in that moment would later be used against them in court. They were then arrested and formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder. As they were processed into custody, the full weight of the evidence against them became clear. Monica was also placed with an undercover officer posing as a cellmate. She confided, "He's not just my lover, he's my confidant, he's my everything." Even behind bars, their twisted love affair continued. Police intercepted jail letters where Monica signed herself Mrs. Baker and Monica Baker. In one particularly disturbing letter, she wrote, "It kind of hurts to not be touched, or fucked, or licked, or loved by you." In recorded jail conversations, Baker told Monica, "I love you, baby. I really do." They were so obsessed with each other that they continued planning their future together even while facing murder charges. The delusion was complete. The trial of Monica Cementilli began with devastating testimony from Christopher Austin, the parole officer who had helped commit the murder. In exchange for a plea deal, Austin agreed to testify against Monica. His testimony was damning. He described the reconnaissance mission disguised as a dinner invitation, how Monica had specifically shown them the backyard where Fabio would later die. He recounted Baker's promises of insurance money, but in a stunning twist, Robert Baker himself testified for Monica's defense. In an apparent attempt to save her, he claimed she had no knowledge of the murder plot. Baker insisted he had acted alone because he was obsessed with her, wanting her to be around him and with him more, like all the time. Baker's testimony created some reasonable doubt, but prosecutors had overwhelming circumstantial evidence. The GPS tracking devices, the unlocked door, the perfectly timed alibi at Target, the immediate inquiries about insurance money, the romantic getaways while Fabio's family mourned. It all pointed to Monica as the mastermind. Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman told jurors the case was fundamentally about betrayal. Monica had deceived everyone, her husband, her children, her friends, investigators. She had orchestrated every detail of the murder. The prosecution made a particularly powerful argument about Monica's behavior after the murder. She left her teenage daughters at home that night, seemingly unconcerned about the dangerous burglars who had just killed their father. Why? Because there was no real danger. She knew exactly who the killers were. Monica's defense attorney argued she was guilty of stupidity, duplicity, lying, adultery, but not murder. He claimed she was simply a foolish woman caught up in an affair, manipulated by Baker's obsession. The jury would have to decide, was Monica an innocent victim of Baker's fixation or the calculating mastermind who orchestrated her husband's brutal murder for money and passion? On April 11, 2025, After 8 hours of deliberation over 3 days, the jury reached their verdict: guilty. First-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, with special circumstances of murder for financial gain and lying in wait, charges that carried mandatory life without parole. On June 23, 2025, Monica Cementilli was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge made a point of stating, "In listening to the evidence in this matter, I do find that the defendant was the mastermind in this conspiracy to commit murder." Robert Baker had already been sentenced to life without parole after pleading no contest. Christopher Austin received 16 years to life for his cooperation with prosecutors. Monica Cementilli traded 20 years of marriage, her family's future, and her freedom for a fantasy built on blood and betrayal. Her daughters lost both parents, one to murder, one to greed and obsession. They must now navigate life knowing their mother orchestrated their father's death. Fabio's son Luigi, from his first marriage, keeps his father's Rolex close. "He wore this all the time," Luigi says. "He wore it when he died. I wear it for special occasions when I want to feel close to him." That Rolex, the one the killers could have easily stolen but left behind, has become a symbol of what this case was never really about. This wasn't a burglary. It wasn't about watches or wallets or material possessions. It was about a woman who wanted everything: passion, excitement, money, a new life, and was willing to destroy her family to get it. Fabio Cementilli had built a beautiful life through hard work and determination. He mentored young stylists, worked with Hollywood stars, and loved his family deeply. Several scholarships and educational programs now bear his name, ensuring his legacy of kindness continues. But his life was cut short at age 49 by the person who knew him best, loved him least, and wanted his money most. In the end, Monica got exactly what she wanted: a life with Robert Baker, just not the one she imagined. Instead of luxury vacations and insurance money, they'll spend the rest of their lives in separate prison cells, their twisted love affair reduced to monitored phone calls and letters read by guards. This case serves as a chilling reminder that the greatest danger can come from those closest to us, from the person sleeping beside us, sharing our home, raising our children, the person who promises to love us until death do us part. Sometimes they mean it more literally than we could ever imagine. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.